In this episode, we interview Preston Byrd. He's a real estate developer. He's developed over 6,300 units, ground up multifamily deals. He's just been doing it for 18 plus years. Prior to that, he has a lot of business experience. He's on the Forbes Business Council. He's an author. He's a speaker. You're going to get a lot of nuggets. Stay tuned and enjoy the episode. So you have like an interesting background. I don't know all the history of, where you started and how you became where you're at with your company, Horizon Companies. And it looks like Horizon does a lot of development throughout the Southeast. And you're doing, is this larger multifamily development projects with, is it affordable housing or is it market rent? What you guys focus on?
Yeah, so we do a combination of both, affordable housing as well as market rate development. And I guess our typical project is probably anywhere from 150 to 250 units, kind of our sweet spot.
That's awesome. So you're in, what states are you mostly in there with the development?
So we develop throughout the southeastern region, which is in about 9 states now, I believe, that we cover.
Great. And are you a publicly traded company or is it a privately owned company?
No, we are 100% privately owned. I started the company back in 2004. In fact, in May, it would be 18 years that we started down the path of real estate development.
Wow, amazing. So the market's gone crazy as you're aware.
Sure.
And what's your thought process going forward? It seems like there's still a huge lack of affordable housing. So it seems like you're in the right space considering we're in a market that's escalated so much. Do you feel strongly that the multifamily industry will keep going as far as affordable housing?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there is certainly a tremendous need just nationally of housing generally. And then certainly when you look at the space and in the affordable housing space, there's even a greater need there as well. As you noted, the market right now it's kind of crazy. It's very volatile right now. It's kind of all over the place. And, this is certainly not the first time as a nation that we've seen this. And, you just kind of learn to adjust and be nimble as you're going through these various changes and evolutions in the marketplace.
Yeah, that's true. So when I was listening to your motivational video, it said that you get up at 3 a.m. every morning, Monday through, even on the weekends. Is that true?
It is true. It is true. It's a habit that for some reason I can't seem to break. I've been doing that for years.
I thought I was an early riser. I get up usually around 3:45 every morning. On the weekends, maybe a little so, but then I'm off to the gym by 4:45. So it's discipline. I love what you said. You said time if I'm gonna maybe cut in that, if you don't mind,
Sure.
Inspirational video right in this so people can see what I just experience. And I really felt it. So
I want to start out with a question. That question is, what is your why? I think it's important and so valuable to understand your why, whatever that is. Do you do what you do for you? Do you do what you do for your mom, your dad, your kids? What's your why? Do you do what you do for money? Or is it for passion? I think it's so important to identify what that looks like for you, what that why is for you. Because frankly, until you really understand what your why is, you won't really ever be able to balance yourself and move in a direction of success because you're going to be all over the place. If there's one word that I want to leave with you today, that word is going to be discipline. Discipline is so invaluable. Discipline, it takes that to create something from nothing. A lot of times people see the gloss and the glimmer and the houses and the cars and the boats and yachts and all of these things that they see, but they don't really realize what's going on behind the scene to create those things. And it's the discipline that goes on in the background to create the opportunity for each of us to really propel ourselves to the next phase and the next level of our lives. I too have been to prison. I too have experienced going through the criminal justice system, but I haven't allowed that to identify who and what I am as a person, who and what I am as a man, as a father, who and what I choose to be, what I choose for my narrative to be. I dictate and control my narrative just as you do. And the reason why I'm able to do that is because of discipline. 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 You have to have discipline in everything that you do.
Sure. And it's been years of discipline. So I'm 44 years old, and just, you have to be disciplined. That's what you said. The number one thing is discipline, discipline, discipline. Can you walk me back to, like, I don't know, before you got into real estate? I think you had, an interesting background before real estate. How did you become the person you became?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that question. I think, discipline is, kind of the root of success. And if you look at, any successful person, regardless of the industry that they're in, it requires a certain amount of discipline in your art, in your craft, to master it. I went to college for architecture and civil engineering. I always had a passion for real estate. After college, I started working for a program that I never imagined or really even knew anything about. It was the National Marrow Donor Program, dealing with bone marrow transplants. And I kind of started that path because I had my best friend in college had leukemia and ended up dying from it. So it opened up a new world to me in terms of, this whole bone marrow thing. But I worked with this program, and I did that for about a year, and that kind of was the creation of my first business. I guess I was kind of always entrepreneurial in nature, and I started my first business from that work experience, which was a medical staffing firm, and I was providing healthcare personnel to hospitals, clinics, you name it. Hated hospitals, hated going, but that was the business I was in, right? It was kind of, in my mind, kind of a stepping stone to get to the next phase of what I really wanted to do. And, at the time when I started, I think I was, 23, 24 years old or so. And, my thinking at the time was, if this fails, so what? I can always go get a job. So I didn't have any expenses or any family or anything. So it was easy for me to do that. But at any rate, I ended up selling that business at some point, got into the .com business back in the 90s when that was a big deal, early 2000s. Started that company with kind of the intention to sell it, raised a bunch of capital, sold it. And then I got to what I really wanted to do, and that was real estate. And I started down the path that most people start down in real estate, and that's, buying single family houses, fixing them up, selling them, renting some. I did that for a couple of years, and I really realized that I didn't like that business model. I didn't like the time that it took for me, to deal with trying to manage properties scattered all around the city, dealing with tenant issues with maintenance and collecting rent, and the margins were slim. I just didn't like that model. And so I had a good friend of mine that I'd met through the years that was into multifamily development. He had been doing it at the time, several years, 10, 12 years or so. And we were having lunch one day, and I told him, I said, man, this is something that I would really want to get involved with. This is probably back in 2003. And, he told me, he said, listen, Preston, if you have the capital, I'll help you put your first deal together. And he did. 2004, started my first deal, about 20 acres of land, broke the project into two phases. December of 25, placed in service 96 units. I couldn't believe it. It was an amazing process, all ground up, new construction. I tell people all the time, I had a fire sale on all my single family houses and stuff. I think I probably lost money on it because I just wanted to get out of that business, because I'm thinking I have essentially 100 properties, 100 houses in one location with a property management company in place. I love it. This is the way to go. And the rest is history. Been going ever since.
That's amazing. And what does your portfolio look like today?
We have a little over 6,300 units currently throughout the southeastern region. And we are internally have a goal of putting 1,000 units a year on the ground for over the next 5 years. We'd like to try to double our portfolio.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And so when you're doing, and what's the kind of like percentage of like market rate versus affordable housing projects that you're developing? Are they
Yeah,
mixed?
that's good. Yeah, that's a good question. It's mixed. I actually cut my teeth. My first deal was an affordable housing project using tax credits. A lot of the projects that we do now, we use, tax exempt bonds, activity bonds, revenue bonds that are enhanced with tax credits as a part of the financing. And we do some creative financing, debt and equity financing. We also, raise internally a lot of private equity from private equity investors. We give our investors, 14, 18% return on their investment, typically over a 24-month period. They're kind of in and out. And because of the way we structure our deals, they're typically in and out through the pre-development and construction cycle. By the time we hit operations, our investors already been paid out and made whole, and they're able to move on. So it's a pretty good mix of affordable as well as market rate.
So when you go in, do you usually do just a construction loan, and then do you ever utilize HUD, or you just don't deal with it because of the time it takes to get those in place?
Yeah, the HUD process is pretty tedious and drawn out. We've gone through it. We prefer not to, just because it is. Those are, the 221D4 type HUD loans. They're good loans. It's just they're very time consuming. So we have, other, through Fannie and other ways that we, do our financing. This business, as I know, is very specific in terms of investors that are out there that have invested in this market and understand this market. So, we have a lot of, lending partners and equity investment partners that really understand the market. So it makes it a lot easier to maneuver in terms of, securing debt and equity for it.
Yeah, and then the short-term investors like it because they're in there until stabilization. Then you refinance them out, sounds like, and they get paid, so they're getting a decent return. So they're happy to keep on reinvesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you're also on the Forbes Business Council, and I'd like to kind of the book I Don't Rent, I Rent. Can you kind of describe the title to me a little bit? I get it, but I want people to get it out there.
Yeah, no, the title came about, because, I'm an advocate for ownership. I'm an advocate for, creating generational wealth. And, one of the things that, I've learned through my years, I'm 50 years old now. So one of the things I've learned through my years is, in order to create generational wealth, ownership is important, and real estate is typically one of those pillars. If you look at all of the billionaires in the world, all of them have real estate in their portfolio at some level. Some bit of the handful of billionaires in the world have become billionaires because of real estate. So real estate is certainly a pillar of, creating wealth and success and generational wealth. So I just advocate ownership in everything that I do. So the I don't rent, I rent obviously as a play on words, because we're renting multifamily housing. But even for the residents, it's kind of a means to an end, right? Most residents don't stay in apartments for a lifetime. Some may, but in many cases, it's more transitional housing, right? So they're in until they can get into a position to buy that first house. I advocate for you buying your first house. So it's kind of a means to an end for many residents or renters to kind of start down the path of creating, their own wealth, whatever they determine that is.
Yeah, it's so important. And now it just seems like it's more important than ever with the cost of everything being so expensive that, you got to own your own property. You got to lock in long-term fixed, debt on those properties. So you know what your payments are. I advocate that. I get a lot of like newer investors calling me and just they're looking for advice. And I try to guide them in the right way, because it's just like, I know, like, it's little by little, the one foot in front of the other, being disciplined is the key, right?
Certainly.
So
Gotta have.
where did you get the mindset? Was your family, did they instill this in you, or is this just all self-taught? You just developed it? I mean, did you come from like a family of success, or was it that you taught yourself success?
Yeah, no. So, I grew up, my parents, were certainly instrumental in instilling certain things into my brother and I in terms of life and success. One of the things that my father was an entrepreneur, not in real estate, but he was always an entrepreneur. And I always saw, from a distance, kind of what he did and how he did it. But one of the things that I recall very vividly, prior to going to college, a lot of parents will tell you, go to school so you can get a degree and get a good job. My father's message to my brother and I was, go to school, get an education so you can create jobs. So it was always instilled, in me very early on to be a job creator, which obviously means entrepreneurship. So that's something that I've always, had in me. And it's something that, too, quite frankly, it is, innate. Sometimes these things are just built into you, and you just build on them by learning the skill set, or, as I noted in the video, continued education. I mean, you have to keep educating yourself and learning more and learning more. And whenever you reach that point where you can't learn anymore, it's time to lay down. But, so, I always want to be in the place where I'm learning and expanding, on my knowledge base. So, yeah, so, it started early for me, just, with my parents, just kind of instilling those kind of, that kind of thinking into me.
You're listening to the Investor Financing Podcast. We'll be right back after this break.
Hello, Beau here, host of the Investor Financing Podcast. Are you a lender, real estate professional, or vendor that provides products or services within the real estate investing and business owner space? We are offering a few sponsorship opportunities to get in front of a highly targeted audience. If you're interested, please click the link below for further information. We look forward to talking with you. Thanks. Make it a great day. And is your business today, is it vertically integrated, meaning you have your own property management companies, you run everything, or do you outsource property management? What does that kind of the internal business structure look like?
Yeah, so we've always outsourced property management just because it allowed us, again, to be disciplined and focus on our true craft, which was developing. Those are some things now based on, what we've gotten as an organization that we're kind of started looking at to determine, if we need to start folding in some of those various components in-house on the property management side. But we've always outsourced it because it gives us the ability to, go out, create this product, develop it, we turn it over to a management company, and then we can go back and focus on, what we do best, and that's develop.
And so I know your goal for your business is build 1,000 new doors a year. What else kind of drives you now? I mean, it sounds like you're at a point in your career where you've kind of done a lot, where most people looking at would say this guy's ultra successful. And what really drives you now? Like, it sounds like if you wanted to, you could go sit on the beach and retire. I mean, what's your kind of end goal here with what you're looking to create?
Yeah, and it's interesting you asked that because we are doing some new and interesting things now. I was having a conversation just yesterday with somebody, and I was telling them, I have done the one-off type developments. I mean, we do, 200 units, 150 units, 250, 200 plus units, and I've done those one-off deals. We are now moving more into community development. So, for instance, we have about 120 acres right now in Huntsville that we are looking to build communities where it will consist of multifamily, single family, retail, hospitality. And that is exciting for me because now we're able to, really have an impact on a city at a greater level by bringing in all of these different sectors of real estate under, one development. So that's one thing that we're working on, which is extremely exciting to me. Then we have another product that we're working on, which I refer to as a hybrid product, and this is a luxury boutique hotel with luxury apartments in the same building. 24-story building that we're working on. We're working on one for the Atlanta market, one for the Nashville market, and those two. That product in and of itself, those two products get me excited because it's something new. Both of those things that I just mentioned are things that I haven't done before. So it's going to be interesting just to kind of see how, they come together. And we've been spending a lot of time, on them and looking at the numbers and, trying to put it together. As you noted earlier, I mean, the market is somewhat volatile now. So that's an interesting play as well. But moving into more, what we're calling community development is exciting for me. So that's the direction that we're moving in now.
Yeah, because you're seeing so the single family houses, those might be build to rent where you're keeping them, or would you sell those off? I mean, it seems like that the single family or the townhome build to rent model seems to be really taking off because I think some people just don't want to own, but they want the experience of living in a house. Is that kind of what you're seeing?
Yeah, sure. So so we're owner developers. We build them, we hold them, and after 10 years or so, we'll determine the disposition of sale or refinance or whatever. But yeah, so we when we develop properties and we go into the various communities, our goal is to pitch tent in those communities and be there for a while. I know there's some developers that build and flip. We don't. We typically hold them. Again, I believe in the idea generational wealth creation, and so you do that by owning as opposed to selling. So we hold our properties for a while.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, the tax consequences, I mean, being able to do cost segregation and there's huge amounts of advantages to holding real estate. And I've sold so many properties where I look back a few years and I'm like, why did I sell that property? Everybody says that. I shouldn't have sold that property that I bought when I was 20 years old because it's worth $1 million. I bought it for 300,000 or whatever that is.
Right.
Yeah,
something you have to look at it kind of like these are long-term investments for sure. Real estate, one thing that God is not creating any more of, and that's land and dirt. That we got what we got. So that value continues to escalate and increase with time. So we and to that point, typically when we develop, we go in markets that we consider growth markets, they're kind of on that growth curve because we do plan to be there for a while.
And somebody at your level, how do you level yourself up? I mean, do you have, everybody talks about, you are who you hang out with kind of thing, and your network is your net worth. How do you keep yourself? Do you have a core group of guys and girls, ladies that you hang out with that are like, up leveling yourself where you're like, wow, these people are amazing? How do you keep yourself like sharp, as once you get to a certain point with your business?
Yeah, I have to be honest with you, Beau. I that's a part of my 3 a.m. regimen. I'm up early. One of the reasons why I'm up early because I spend time, in meditation. I meditate. I do yoga. I read a lot on the industry. That's when I'm able to get most of my stuff done. It's quiet. I don't have people emailing me. My phone's not going off because when the day starts, you're in the mix at that point. So I do spend a lot of time reading. material. There are a few folks out there that I kind of monitor from a distance, and I listen to their stuff, and I read their books. But a lot of it for me is really more dealing with me. You've heard that, the adage, I am my own worst enemy. So it's important for me to try to stay as balanced as I can. I'm at a place now, I try to have a healthy work-life balance. I have a wife and kids, and my kids are older now. And so I try to, have a sense of balance, family wise as well. So I tell you, my wife is extremely instrumental in keeping me grounded and focused. She's very, we've been together for, in fact, this year, 25 years this year, but we dated in college. So she always tells everybody, not 25, it's 29, mister, as much as I've gone through. So, all of those things, help and add value into balancing you out and keeping you focused and keeping you disciplined. So yeah, there's a mix of things, that I do to keep that focus.
Yeah, I feel like the morning times, just what you were saying resonates with me, because it's like, that's the time my brain is during the day is just too much, too fast. I feel like I can do what Cal Newport says. I think he says deep work in the morning. That's the only time I can ever do deep work. And it's
absolutely.
And I have to get up there. And I like that. It's interesting, as I interview more people, and as I interview more successful people, I should say, they all have similar traits, right? It is the morning routines, the discipline, the reading. I think it's not rocket science. If people start listening to these things, it's like the people that are most successful are doing certain activities.
Right.
And then, let's mirror those activities, because that's probably why they're reaching their goals. And it all comes back to that discipline thing, where it's like, you wake up, you're doing the same thing every day. You're going to get better and better. Once that same thing about going to the gym. If you wake up and go to the gym or do your workout, you're going to get more fit over time. And it's just a natural progression.
Certainly.
Yeah.
It's funny. People that work with me and my staff, they're so used to getting emails from me at 4 and 5 in the morning. I mean, in fact, if they don't get them, they're like, "Where's this guy? What's going on with him?" I mean, because after I do my morning stuff, then that's when I'm sending out emails from the previous day. I'm sending out, messages, to my group, to my team. So I just feel so much more productive. I feel like, I'm at my peak first thing in the morning. By the afternoon, long days, I've crashed out. I tell my kids, don't ask me for anything after 6 o'clock. I may say yes and don't mean it. I've had a long day. So, I have an appreciation for the early morning times.
And when you're getting started in the multifamily development space, I mean, it sounded like you had a little bit of capital. Obviously, you had sold a business, but when you're doing these complex developments, for people that are listening, it's about structuring deals. Once you find the property, you're doing your pro formas, you're figuring out what the as is stabilized value is going to be. Now you're kind of reverse engineering. What are the total project costs going to be to develop this property? And then you're actually working on the capital stack, right? Because in the beginning, it's all about, leveraging and figuring out. And that's where you got to lay in the tax exempt bonds and different structures. That's kind of complex. Where would you recommend somebody who's thinking about development, kind of learning the lay of the land about, how the capital stack works on these tax credits and tax exempt bonds? Where can people get some knowledge about that? Because that's not the easiest thing to understand.
Well, it's not. It's very complex. As I said, for me, fortunately, I had someone to walk me through the process. I sat at their feet. They took me through the process. And even after the first project, I mean, they hung with me and we went through other projects together. It takes time. This is not something that you do overnight. It's not something that you learn overnight. But it does require a lot of reading, a lot of research. My book, not that I'm trying to market or promote the book, but it talks about that process. And it talks about how to use tax exempt bonds and tax credits and how to go through the process of developing and building multifamily. There are other resources out there that you can find. It does require, spending time, reading and researching and understanding, the business model, but also understanding the market that you want to develop in. I mean, we do a great deal of market research before we, put anything out there. I mean, we're spending money, trying to understand what the market is, what the market looks like, why the market is moving this way, what's the demographics, what's the makeup, what's going to be happening over the next 5 years. So we spent a lot of time doing our homework because, we're about to make a $30-40 million investment into a market. We want to make sure that it can sustain itself. So research, homework, I mean, in anything that you do, and I've been doing this for almost 18 years now, and I still do research and homework on any new project that we're dealing with. So it just requires, again, that discipline to really spend time trying to learn the business and the markets that you're going in.
Amazing. Well, this has been an energizing interview. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your day. If people want to learn a little bit more about you, where's the best place to send them?
Yeah, I mean, our company website is horizoncompanies.cc. And of course, my personal website is IamPrestonByrd.com. That's
amazing. Well, thank you, Preston. Really appreciate you joining us and giving us some nuggets today. And guys, when I go edit this video, you're going to see the motivational video plugged in here because
awesome.
it's really, really good. And I'm going to make that a morning ritual, that 5-minute video every day.
Man,
it's a good day to start the day.
I appreciate that, man.
Yes.
Good
and I appreciate you. And thanks everybody for watching. I hope you guys got a lot of value out of this. And guys, it really comes down to discipline. There's no other thing I can tell you. You heard it from Preston. You got to stay focused. You got to stay disciplined. And that's what I tell myself every day. So if you want to up level, you got to stay disciplined. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, man. This is awesome. Appreciate you.